Hi, my name's David Alberts, and welcome to this week's edition of BeenThereDoneThat WhereNext, where we talk to CMOs and interesting folk in the industry about where they've been, what they've done, and where they see the world going next. And today, it's a delight to have Abigail Comber on the call with us. And Abby, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on, David.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Abby, yeah, we've chatted a lot, but listen, just for the sake of introduction, can you tell us your journey, where you've been and what you've done?
Oh, my journey. It's always been in customer and marketing. So I started my career off a long time ago at British Airways, becoming the Chief Customer Officer there and CMO. And then after that, I moved into high street retail after doing a couple of really interesting interim jobs in more kind of commercial direct positions. And then after high street retail, I went to a health and wellness company. So really moved along the agenda from CMO, chief customer, into commercial, and then ended my last role at Signpost as managing director, just a few months ago.
Excellent, excellent. Getting closer and closer to a healthy well-being of customers out there in all fields. So as we've discussed, we always ask the same three questions of all of our guests. And the first question is, Abby, tell us, what's the biggest challenge you think as a CMO, as an industry, we face today?
Oh, I think that we are currently so focused on data and AI that we've lost sight of the big idea. A lot of us have lost sight of our North Star. You know, the cost of living crisis is driving people down price and value and comparisons. You see the big supermarkets comparing themselves to Aldi on price match. But where are the big ideas that we used to see from people like Dove, who have sustained their big idea? And things like the Sport England campaign of many years ago now, This Girl Can. There's too much concentration on some of the hard facts, and ultimately we're human beings. And I think that we're very, very at risk of being too narrow, and we've just lost sight of knowing our North Star and using it. Sometimes they remain too much like an internal mantra.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. And you talk a lot about, in our previous conversations, about connecting. We focus on connecting to consumers.
Yeah, it's really easy with lots of data to connect to customers, but it's really difficult to connect with customers. They're two entirely different things. A great saying out there, which is, data guides, but the heart decides. And you just think about that yourself. You need to stand out as a brand in order to really connect with people, for their heart to decide, because people will always justify afterwards any purchase decision that may have been a little bit more expensive or a little bit less convenient, through their heart, not through the facts of the matter.
It's quite interesting. Jonathan Haidt has a book out at the moment, and he talks about the journey, and he talks about, first and foremost, it's your intuition. Yeah. And once you tap into your intuition, then you'll make judgment. And once you make judgment, you'll do data to rationalize it. Yeah. And yet we all seem to, as you say, believe that if we give the data, then we'll get the information, and then we'll get the intuition. And you're right, it's just the wrong way around. So this is where we go, been there, done that, where next? If you could imagine a world that you think could change this, where would you imagine that we should go in a good place? Ideal world?
Yeah, I think in an ideal world, you would have the data, and I'm not saying don't base things on data. You would have data, but you would understand the problem that you needed to overcome with that data by turning it into context. A great example of this would be, many moons ago when I was at BA, you would assume that somebody had stopped flying because they stopped collecting their miles and went from gold to silver, down. And only because we had face-to-face lunches and dinners with our members and we invited them along to talk to us, did they go, yeah, it's just that my project moved from Japan to Kent. I'm still as loyal to BA as I ever was. And as an executive club member, they wanted their loyalty to be paid back to them for their personal time when they were with their families. But what we'd do is bounce them down the tiers. So that's where lifetime tier points came from. That would never have come out of the data, because the data would have said customers stop flying. But actually the loyalty for the customer to a brand, because of how they'd served them in the really bad trips and, you know, the time away from home, is a great example. So for me, it's data, it's understand the problem, define the solution through the data plus the context, and always make sure that the big idea is still rooted in that North Star. That just isn't just your internal values, it's something you express externally.
Yeah, that's really good. It's so interesting that the word big brand idea, big idea in the context of, and we always talk about it, what's that 5+ year idea, rather than that individual tactical idea. And that's when you really need to start understanding who you are and the role that you can play in other people's world, rather than the short term.
And that's where I go back to kind of the big ideas around Dove. They have sustained that idea for many years now in an industry that really hasn't followed as well. They've played poor Me Too games in other brands, but those guys have continued to evolve and talk about all sorts of, you know, things that may have been taboo a number of years ago, but they've continued to stay true to their values and the big idea, even through tactical campaigns.
Very good, very good. So if you were talking to, which you are, a network of CMOs out there, and they understand what you're saying, that without a North Star, it's hard to navigate where you want to get to without following that North Star, what would you say to them the first step is in order to start on that journey?
I think a lot of organizations don't ask the question, does this serve our North Star? Does this idea, does this initiative, does it serve our North Star? They just have it there, it's written down, and then it gets a little bit forgotten, and then it becomes very tactical because of the nature of the, you know, the commercial context. But the brand North Star really has to exist everywhere. That needs to exist in the departments that make the critical decisions, and the data needs to be a guide towards that. The data shouldn't decide, because ultimately the heart does, and that's where your brand overlay on the data and the insight works brilliantly well. So for me, the thing is about your organizational structure and your decision-making process that sits behind that. You know, the customer area, as it's often known now, the CMO, they are the ones that hold your customer's voice inside the business, and the data should be feeding the questions that they're asking of how can we make this better for the customer to deliver the commercial returns that we need. So a lot of it for me is organizational structure, decision-making processes, clear and collegiate work between departments, but ultimately understanding what the brand's North Star is and does it serve the customer and the commercial outcomes. And I think you can get there. I just think people need to talk more about the customer and not always just about the hard data. They need to use one to inform the other.
Very good. It's the data and the ongoing relevance that makes the North Star shine.
Right. Yeah, it really is. You know, it's a great analogy, but we talk about it in brands all the time. And then does that happen in every single meeting? No. You know, are people asking the question of, that's a really great idea, it's a really great initiative, but does it serve our overall purpose? And if it doesn't, you have to reskin it. And you have to really understand the context of the data. Otherwise, you end up with things like I gave in that example that we used to have in the executive club.
Very good, very good. Well, Abby, thank you so much for shining a light on the problems that we face. And, you know, with that, you know, it's a celebration of marketing, what you're talking about, and its role. And no wonder you've had that successful journey. And thanks so much for sharing your story with us.
That's a pleasure.
and speak to you soon. And for everyone out there, look forward to seeing you next time when we share more questions with more influential people in our industry like Abby about where next. Thank you. Bye, Abby.
Bye.